China now, I think, is the first and only country that has assigned an official ambassador to the Taliban government. So Afghanistan now, they're going to put, I don't know what the exact thing is, but basically at least one training camp in each province. And so they're going to train all the foreign terrorists in Afghanistan, and then they're going to deploy them from Afghanistan.
China was there in Afghanistan the minute we pulled out. I know you know a little bit about this. Very rich lithium mines in Afghanistan. Lithium is what we need to make the batteries that power the green energy. China's taken, anybody can kind of piece this together and they go, oh, well, maybe there's something to that. Do you think there's anything to that?
Well, yeah. I really hope people have known this the entire time, because it would blow my mind if people negotiated with the Taliban didn't know this. But in 2009, Mullah Berader, who again is the person who negotiated the peace deal, his job for the Taliban was he was the liaison from the Taliban to the government of China. And he would go to China and meet with the Chinese government. At the time, it was obviously, as you can imagine, just keeping a relationship going. The Chinese really wanted, hey, Taliban, if you collect any info on the Uyghurs, on the Uyghurs, pass it to us. So it's really interesting. People don't realize that the Taliban are reporting on other Muslims to China. So everyone acting like, oh yeah, they're going to be some big counterterrorism force. The people of China are doing abuses against. The Taliban have been supporting that for a very, very long time, besides what they're doing in their own country. And then Taliban, of course, would ask for stuff like help us get weapons or funds for weapons. So it was that kind of relationship. But the Taliban-China relationship has been stronger than the U.S. Taliban relationship, at least since 2009, for sure. So, of course, the China would be the main party they link up with when they go to. And China now, I think, is the first and only country that has assigned an official ambassador to the Taliban government.
They're the first ones?
I think they're the first ones, yeah.
Are they the only ones thus far?
Yeah, everyone else has these weird envoys, but I believe that's the first designated ambassadorial position.
I was talking to these Northern Alliance guys, and they were saying there are Chinese officials everywhere over there, building massive hotels right outside of these lithium deposits. Like huge multi-million-dollar structures, which you don't see those very often over there in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And it's smart of them. Obviously it goes along with their Belt Road Initiative. Like I said, they don't have to go make a relationship, right? The guy they brokered with now, I don't know what he is now, like number 3 in the government, but he also plays a huge part in the economics piece of this current government anyway. So he's already positioned anyway to hook China up, which was his closest ally before he was captured.
Can you talk a little bit about the Northern Alliance and what's going on with them right now?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the Northern Alliance. The thing is, obviously, as you know, there's pockets of resistance, right? The Northern Alliance is the most famous because obviously that goes back to Ahmad Shah Massoud. And he was the key U.S. ally before 9/11. The really interesting thing is, and we talk about it in our book, is, he was assassinated, of course. Well, the individual who provided the 2 Tunisian suicide bombers to him provided attackers to Zawahiri for the Benghazi attacks too, right? The guy's still in play. And I like to try to tell people this is still all connected, right? I know Massoud's son comes up as a connection. It's like, no, even the same terrorists are still in the circle as when Ahmad Shah Massoud was in power. And I feel the Northern Resistance is trying to tell that to people, right? Like, these are still the same attackers. We're here fighting international terrorists. There's a lot of misinformation in the U.S. that what's happening in Afghanistan is like a domestic war or a tribal war. And it's like, no, those are foreign terrorists. They're fighting Al-Qaeda. At this point, so many terrorists are pouring in to Afghanistan as well. And the really interesting part is Al-Qaeda has adapted. So they learned something, I think, from Benghazi. So when Al-Qaeda went into Libya after Gaddafi, they decided, hey, it's better for us to take the local commanders and make them the Al-Qaeda leaders instead of bringing in a foreigner. Because, like you bring in an Egyptian into Benghazi, it doesn't always go well, right? Because the locals are like, Egyptians. So they decided we're going to appoint the local. So now Al-Qaeda is doing that in Afghanistan. So for each province that Al-Qaeda is making commanders for, a lot of them, they're taking Taliban members and making them the Al-Qaeda commander. So the two things that works for the Al-Qaeda, right? The U.S. will just say they're Taliban when they're Al-Qaeda, and they already have the support because they're the Taliban, right? So you're not bringing in some outside force and being like, follow me, I'm Al-Qaeda. You're saying, hey, you're already following the Taliban guy. He now works for Al-Qaeda. And that's what they did in Benghazi. And the two that they chose in Benghazi, they were involved in our attacks. And like I said, they're doing it in Afghanistan now, but like for every province, right? So it's like 100 Benghazis, it almost feels like.
Man, they're smart.
They are. It's genius because there's always been a little ruffling, especially you bring in Egyptians is always the best example. And then, there's a little headbutting.
Man, can you talk a little bit about what the resistance is, who it is, who they're fighting? I mean, just more of a snapshot of what's going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the resistance. There's different pockets. So there's the Tajiks, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the ones we all know, the Northern Alliance. And then there's kind of like the Sadats, like Sami Sadat. There's the ones who were basically kind of maybe their special forces in their military or in like the Ministry of Defense of the real Afghan government. And they have like a resistance and pockets of resistance and different leaders, right? And a lot of them are a Pashtun, but they don't have to be, right? But so as we go along, right, all these different pockets are going to need to go under an umbrella.
They're going to need to unite.
Exactly. And because that's what the terrorists do, right? I mean, even if you look over in Pakistan, I don't know if you remember when TTP was formed. But the only purpose of forming TTP was to make the terrorists stronger by putting them all together. So they took like Bayatullah Masood's group, Abdullah Masood's, Gul Bahadir's, and Fakir Muhammad's, and they said, okay, you all go under this structure. So they did it. So Al-Qaeda's like, that's genius. And bin Laden said, I want to start doing that. I want to do it in Libya. He didn't do it when he wanted to do, but Ansar al-Sharia Benghazi started doing it. And then later on, they followed bin Laden's plan, and they actually made another organization that did follow bin Laden's plan and reported to Al-Qaeda. But when Ansar al-Sharia Benghazi was set up, and that was one of the attackers in our group, they said, any group, you can join us. And so I think this confuses a lot of people. So like there'll be a guy at our attacks, he's Ansar al-Sharia Benghazi, and he's AQIM, because it's an umbrella organization. You can be any terrorist group under the Ansar al-Sharia banner. And Al-Qaeda is getting really smart about that. They're actually having meetings with international terrorists to discuss how can we make more of these umbrella organizations and wrap us under it. Even the Haqqanis are involved in those discussions. One of our terrorists that we found recently that had been in Gitmo, he's still in Libya. He's having those discussions with the Haqqanis about, hey, how do we view all of this together, right? Don't make it Afghanistan, don't make it Libya, make this a global terrorism front. Like those conversations are happening.
Wow.
And the thing is, they wanted to do this in Libya and they failed. So Libya was supposed to become where all the training camps were, and then they would deploy all the terrorists out from those training camps to all the future jihads. First it was Syria, but then wherever it would become. So they've now shifted that to Afghanistan. So Afghanistan now, they're going to put, I don't know what the exact thing is, but basically at least one training camp in each province. And so they're going to train all the foreign terrorists in Afghanistan, and then they're going to deploy them from Afghanistan to the different groups. And the really interesting part is the terrorist who moved all of our attackers that left our attacks out of Libya after the attacks, he's sitting in Kabul. So basically, Al Qaeda's best terrorist facilitator is in Kabul because that's their plan.
Wow. Why do you think so many foreign terrorists are converging in on Afghanistan?
Because it's safe.
Because we're not there.
Yeah. So even one of our most recent ones, I'm assuming he's a high value target in Libya. He was a very high target value when we were in Pakistan. He now goes to Afghanistan. There's no more drone strikes. He can live a lot safer. So of course they're going to move there. And remember, that's not where the training camp infrastructure is going to be, and they want to support that.
Do you think China is going to aid them in future attacks on us?
I think they're for sure going to turn a blind eye. I think they're going to ride this for as long as they can. I don't think China's stupid. I'm not sure China thinks Taliban's going to be ruling 10 years from now. But I think China's like, let's position ourselves for whatever that fallout's going to look like. I think that's more what China's thinking.
Do you think China's going to be rolling over there in 10 years?
I'm not entirely sure.
They already are, it sounds like.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.